Imagine the vast open sea, a place of endless possibilities and profound mysteries. Among these, one story has captured the imagination of the world for over a century: the enigmatic disappearance of the Mary Celeste. In 1872, the merchant ship Mary Celeste set sail from New York to Genoa, only to be found adrift near the Azores with no one on board. This vessel, its crew, and their eventual fate have become the subject of much speculation and debate. Welcome to the Bird's Eye Report, where today we'll jump into this maritime mystery and unravel the facts, the theories, and the history that surround one of the sea's most enduring enigmas. From the ship's construction and its fateful final voyage to the theories that have emerged in the wake of its discovery, each aspect of this tale is a piece of a puzzle that has confused people for over a century. The story of the Mary Celeste begins not with her mysterious final voyage, but with her very creation. Launched under the name Amazon in 1861 from Spencer's Island, Nova Scotia, the brigantine was initially a 30.3 meter long, 6.9 meter wide vessel weighing 198.5 tons. Her construction marked her as a typical merchant ship of the era, nothing unusual, designed for both speed and cargo capacity. Historical records from the shipyard of Joshua Dewis detail a hull built from locally sourced timber, a common practice in 19th century shipbuilding. The ship was owned by a consortium of 9 people headed by the shipyard's owner, Dewis, but more importantly, among the co-owners was Robert McClellan, the ship's first captain. After her launch on May 18th and her registration on June 10th, both in 1861, tragedy immediately struck and already sparked rumors that the ship was cursed. For her maiden voyage in June, the Mary Celeste, still called the Amazon at this point, sailed to 5 islands in Nova Scotia to load a cargo of timber that was due to be transported in London. However, after supervising the loading of the ship, Captain McClellan fell ill and his condition rapidly worsened. Due to this, the ship immediately returned to Spencer's Island, where unfortunately Captain McClellan died on June 19th. The exact cause for his death, according to what I could find, is unknown. He was the ship's first, but not the last, captain to die prematurely. After McClellan's death, John Parker took over as captain and resumed the voyage to London, which itself was full of various misfortunes, like the ship colliding with fishing equipment off of Eastport, Maine, and running into and sinking a brig, which is another type of ship, in the English Channel. Parker remained in command for 2 more years, where nothing cursed in particular happened, but he was succeeded by Captain William Thompson, who would remain in command until 1867, where still nothing out of the ordinary happened during his captaincy. In fact, a crewmate aboard the Amazon during this time is quoted to have said, "We went to the West Indies, England, and the Mediterranean, what we call the foreign trade. Not a thing unusual happened." Well, that is until October 1867. Early in the month, the ship was sailing off of Cape Breton Island in Nova Scotia when a massive storm struck. This storm would continue the horrible luck of the ship, as the winds and waves were so powerful that the ship was driven ashore. She was so badly damaged that her owners abandoned her as a wreck. However, just a few weeks later, the ship was acquired by Alexander McBean, who then sold it to Richard Haynes. Haynes restored the ship, made himself captain, and renamed her the Mary Celeste. Although that's about the only contribution Haynes made, since the ship was seized from him by his creditors and sold to a consortium led by James Winchester. In early 1892, the ship underwent a massive overhaul. The length was increased to 31 meters, the width to 7.8 meters, and its tonnage increased to just over 282 tons. And by this point, Winchester's consortium was made up of 12 shares. 6 were owned by him, 2 minor investors had 1 share each, and the final 4 were purchased by the ship's most infamous captain, Benjamin Spooner Briggs. Captain Briggs was a seasoned captain, hailing from a family with deep nautical roots. He was one of 5 sons to Captain Nathan Briggs, and all but one of the sons went to sea, 2 of them becoming captains, one of which of course was Captain Briggs himself. Records and personal correspondences portray him as a disciplined, religious, and family-oriented man, deeply respected by his peers. Even though he wasn't from Alabama, he married his cousin Sarah Cobb and had 2 children, Arthur in 1865 and Sophia Matilda in 1870. By the time his daughter was born, he was considering getting out of the seafaring lifestyle and settling down to start a business with his brother, who was also tired of that lifestyle. I guess that life was harder to escape than they imagined, since both of them, instead of starting a business, invested their savings into shares of ships. His brother Oliver invested it in the Julia A. Halleck, And well, I think you know which ship Briggs invested in. That wasn't his only contribution to the Mary Celeste though. Captain Briggs also modified a cabin aboard the vessel in order to accommodate his family, something that would turn out to be a bad idea. In October 1872, Briggs took command of the ship in order to prepare her for her first voyage after the major refit. The crew, handpicked by Briggs, was composed of 7 men. Some of them had already worked with the captain and were very close to him. According to the ship's logs and crew manifest, these men were not novices but seasoned sailors. In a letter Sarah Briggs sent to her mother, she described them as capable if they continue as they've begun. On October 20th, Briggs arrived at the pier in New York City to supervise the loading of the cargo. The Mary Celeste was supposed to transport 1,701 barrels of denatured alcohol to Genoa. The cargo was nothing unusual. Denatured alcohol is basically ethanol with various additives to discourage recreational consumption. This detail of the ship's cargo, as mundane as it might seem, becomes a critical element in later theories about the Mary Celeste's fate. After being joined by his wife and daughter, and by the way his son stayed home with his grandmother in order to continue his education, Briggs set sail for Genoa on November 5th. However, the weather was precarious and Briggs decided to anchor the ship just off of Staten Island in order to wait for better conditions. During this wait, his wife decided to send one final letter to her mother-in-law where she stated that she will try to remember anything that happens on the voyage, which he, pertaining to her son, would be pleased to hear. In the meantime though, the Canadian brigantine Dei Gratia was docked nearby in Hoboken, New Jersey, a detail you might think is irrelevant but becomes extremely important later on. She was captained by Captain David Morehouse and was waiting to transport cargo also destined for Genoa. Morehouse was another experienced and respected seaman, just like Briggs. Some even say they knew each other, with Morehouse's widow recalling that they dined together the evening before the Mary Celeste departed, although there's no way to be certain since she claimed this 50 years later. Either way, after the weather cleared up on November 7th, 1872, the Mary Celeste left the harbor and entered the Atlantic Ocean on her way to Genoa. It was the last time the ship and her occupants would be seen by those on shore. The Dei Gratia would set sail on November 15th, following the same route only 8 days later after the Mary Celeste. The fate of the Mary Celeste took a turn from routine to remarkable on December 5th, 1872, when the brigantine Dei Gratia, under the command of Captain David Morehouse, spotted her drifting erratically near the Azores. The Mary Celeste's erratic movement and oddly set sails led Captain Morehouse to believe something was wrong. As the ships moved closer to each other, the crew of the Dei Gratia could see no one on the deck of the Mary Celeste. The captain sent his crew to investigate. Upon closer inspection, Morehouse and his crew found the Mary Celeste abandoned, her sails partially set but in poor condition. The ship's discovery in such a state, as described in the testimonies of the Dei Gratia crew, was puzzling, to say the least. The Mary Celeste was seaworthy, her cargo of alcohol largely intact, and more interestingly, the personal belongings of the crew and the Briggs family were undisturbed. Notably though, the ship's lifeboat was missing, along with the ship's chronometer, sextant, and the captain's logbook, all of which were important instruments needed for sailing during this time period. There was water in the hold of the ship, but nothing significant for a ship of this size. Further deepening the mystery was the condition of the Mary Celeste's navigation equipment and her cargo. Expert analysis of the ship's condition suggested that the instruments and papers were deliberately removed, indicating a planned abandonment rather than a hasty evacuation. This detail contradicts theories of sudden disaster or something like that, and instead point towards a decision by Captain Briggs to calmly leave the ship, even if there was something that went wrong where they needed to abandon her. The crew of the Dei Gratia also found the ship's daily log in the crew cabin. The final entry was dated at 8 a.m. on November 25th, 9 days before the Dei Gratia discovered her. The position was recorded off of Santa Maria Island, nearly 740 kilometers from the point where the ship was encountered. Subsequent investigations revealed no signs of violence or struggle aboard the vessel. The galley equipment was neatly stowed away, and there was a 6-month supply of food and water. This evidence, as noted in the official inquiry documents, once again suggests that the crew and the passengers left in an orderly fashion, perhaps anticipating a return to the vessel. After the brief inspection, Captain Morehouse decided to navigate the Mary Celeste to Gibraltar and split his crew between the two ships. The Dei Gratia arrived on December 12th and the Mary Celeste due to fog the following day. The Mary Celeste was immediately impounded in order to prepare for salvage hearings. After all, Whoever salvaged the vessel was entitled to a reward based on a percentage of the value of the cargo. The discovery of the Mary Celeste in such a condition, combined with the lack of concrete evidence about the fate of her crew and passengers, transformed the ship from a mere merchant vessel to a legend of the seas. Before we take a look at the theories though, let's see what happened during the salvage hearings. The Mary Celeste salvage hearings, which began on December 17, 1872 in Gibraltar, were overseen by Chief Justice Sir James Cochrane and led by Frederick Solly Flood, the Attorney General of Gibraltar. Flood, known for his inflexible and arrogant demeanor, was convinced of foul play in the Mary Celeste affair based on the testimonies he received, particularly from the crew of the Dei Gratia. His stance was reinforced by media reports suggesting alcohol-induced misconduct on board. On December 23rd, an inspection of the Mary Celeste was ordered by Flood and conducted by John Austin, surveyor of shipping, with diver Ricardo Portunato's assistance. They noted suspicious cuts on the ship's bow and a substance on the captain's sword initially thought to be blood. Austin's report highlighted the ship's intact condition, suggesting no severe weather impact, a point not without its critics, who suggested the evidence could have been tampered with post-abandonment. Further inspections by Royal Naval captains found more suspicious marks and potential bloodstains, leading to Flood to firmly believe in human involvement in the ship's abandonment. He submitted a report to the Board of Trade in London, hypothesizing that the crew had accessed the alcohol cargo, leading to violence and the murder of the Briggs family and officers, followed by a staged collision and escape. James Winchester, the ship's owner, arrived at the hearings on January 15th, confronted by Flood's high demands and suspicions. Winchester defended Captain Briggs's character and integrity. Flood's theories also took a hit when scientific tests revealed the supposed bloodstains were not blood at all. An American consul's report also contradicted Flood's theory, attributing the marks on the ship to natural sea actions rather than human intervention. With no substantial evidence to support his suspicions, Flood released the Mary Celeste from his jurisdiction on February 25th. The ship departed for Genoa with a new crew led by Captain George Blatchford. On April 8th, the court awarded a salvage payment of £1,700 to Captain Morehouse, significantly lower than some authorities expected. Cochrane's concluding remarks were critical of Morehouse and carried implications of wrongdoing, casting a long shadow of suspicion over Morehouse and his crew in public opinion. Now let's take a look at some theories as to what happened to the Mary Celeste. These theories, while varied, can be categorized into several main themes as explored in historical texts, maritime records, and expert analysis. The first one is the possibility that pirates boarded the Mary Celeste, leading to the abandonment of the ship. Now, even though pirates were active off of the coast of Morocco during that time period, experts have observed that pirates would have looted the ship. The intact condition of the ship's cargo and the personal belongings of the crew contradicts this idea of a robbery. That's why this theory is one of the least plausible ones. The next theory is that a natural disaster, such as a waterspout or a seaquake, could have forced the crew to abandon the ship. While it is plausible that the crew might have feared a natural disaster, there were no records of significant seismic activity in the region during that period. Additionally, the ship's structural integrity and the orderly condition of her interior suggest that she didn't encounter extreme weather conditions that would necessitate abandonment. All of this was presented as facts during the hearings in Gibraltar as well. Even if the ship began drifting towards a coral reef that was close by near Santa Maria Island, which isn't really a natural disaster but still nature related, so that's why I'm mentioning it, the sails would have been set in a different position, so that theory falls in the water too. The third theory, which is really interesting to me personally, is that the abandonment was part of a scheme to commit insurance fraud, either by the owners, which Captain Briggs was one of, or by Briggs and Morehouse. Research into the financial backgrounds of the owners, however, and Captain Briggs revealed no evidence of financial distress that would motivate such a fraud. Furthermore, the rigorous investigation conducted during the salvage hearings found no evidence of foul play. Historical documents, including correspondences and financial records, support the conclusion that insurance fraud was unlikely. Next, we have the lifeboat theory, which was supported by Briggs's cousin Oliver Cobb. He suggested that the transfer of personnel to the lifeboat may have been intended as a temporary safety measure. He speculated from the Dei Gratia crew's report on the state of the rigging and ropes that the ship's main line of rope may have been used to attach the lifeboat to the ship, enabling the crew to return to the Mary Celeste when the danger had passed. However, the Mary Celeste would have sailed away empty if the line had snapped or been cut, leaving the lifeboat adrift with its occupants. While this theory does sound plausible, many experts have stated that tying the lifeboat to the ship would be illogical if the ship itself was in danger. Either way, there is no substantial evidence to confirm or reject this specific theory. The final theory is the alcohol fumes theory, which really is the most interesting and possibly the most haunting. The hypothesis is that an explosion scare caused by fumes from the alcohol cargo led the crew to abandon the ship. This theory is supported by the nature of the cargo and the known volatility of alcohol fumes. It was not unusual during this time period to actually hear small bangs coming from this type of cargo, simply because of the way alcohol fumes behave. It's plausible that the crew, fearing an imminent major explosion, evacuated the ship temporarily. This ties into the previous theory about the lifeboat, basically being the reason why they would go on the lifeboat, keep it tied to the ship, wait for the explosion, see the outcome, and then if everything was safe, go back to it, or if it wasn't, sail away or look for help on the lifeboat. However, there was no evidence of an actual explosion or fire aboard the Mary Celeste. This theory remains one of the more credible explanations, though it could not, was not, and cannot be conclusively proven. This is the one I believe in personally. Either way, even with all these theories, like I said earlier, the official inquiry conducted in Gibraltar concluded with no definitive answer. The court's records indicate that the Attorney General, Frederick Solly Flood, was biased towards theories of foul play by the ship's owners, Captain Briggs, and even Captain Morehouse, or pirate activity, but lacked evidence to support these claims. The inquiry's final verdict was inconclusive, leaving the mystery unsolved. These theories about the fate of the Mary Celeste range from the plausible to the fantastical, and I think each theory reflects our need to find explanations for the unexplained. However, despite extensive investigations and analysis, the true fate of the Mary Celeste's crew and passengers remains one of the greatest unsolved mysteries of the maritime world. Of course, even with this tragic event, this was not the end nor the final death of a captain of the Mary Celeste. The Mary Celeste left Genoa on June 26, 1873, and arrived in New York a couple of months later. Then, in early 1874, the original consortium sold the ship at a considerable loss to a partnership of New York businessmen. This was due to the fact that newspaper stories of bloodshed and murder made the Mary Celeste an unpopular ship. Under this new ownership, the Mary Celeste sailed new routes, regularly losing money. After a couple of years of sailing, the ship once again appeared in the news in February 1879. She was reported at the island of St. Helena, where she had to call to seek medical assistance for her at-the-time captain, Edward Tuthill, who had fallen ill. A couple of days later, Captain Tuthill died on the island, the third captain of the Mary Celeste to die prematurely, which further reinforced the beliefs at the time that the ship was cursed. 1 year later, in 1880, the ship was sold once again into a partnership of Bostonians. The ship changed captains and home ports many times during this period. Finally, in 1884, she had her final captain, Gilman C. Parker. Later that year, Parker conspired with a group of shippers who filled the Mary Celeste with largely worthless cargo misrepresented in the ship's manifest as valuable goods and insured for $30,000, almost $1 million, adjusted to inflation. On December 16th that year, Parker set out for the ship's final voyage to Port-au-Prince, the capital of Haiti. On January 3rd, 1885, the Mary Celeste approached the port, and on the way was a well-charted coral reef. Parker then ran the ship into the reef on purpose, ripping out the bottom of the ship and wrecking it beyond repair. He later claimed the insurance money. Of course, this was short-lived because the ship's insurers found out, sued him and the rest of the shippers for insurance fraud. He surprisingly won his court case and was allowed to go free. His reputation, however, was tarnished forever, just like the Mary Celeste was after that harrowing month nearly 13 years earlier. Perhaps an uneventful and maybe somewhat generic end to a ship which is nowadays considered a legend with endless myths and theories surrounding it. The tale of the Mary Celeste has inspired numerous literary works, films, documentaries, and television programs. Notable among these is Arthur Conan Doyle's short story, J. Habakkuk Jefferson's Statement, published in 1884, which, although fictional, was mistaken by many at the time for a true account of what happened to the Mary Celeste. This is also where that whole thing about it being called the Marie Celeste comes from. This story significantly shaped public perception of the mystery. Scholars and media analysts note that the story's adaptations often reflect the era's cultural and social anxieties. For instance, early interpretations leaned towards piracy and mutiny, mirroring 19th century concerns about lawlessness at sea. Modern retellings, however, often explore themes of supernatural occurrences or government conspiracies, indicative of contemporary societal interests. Experts in psychology and cultural studies also attribute the lasting intrigue of the Mary Celeste to the human's affinity for unsolved mysteries and the appeal of open-ended stories. The absence of definitive answers allows for continuous speculation and the projection of new theories, keeping the story alive across generations. The Mary Celeste has also become a quintessential ghost ship in maritime folklore, symbolizing the mysteries and dangers of the sea. Her story is often used as a cautionary tale among sailors and has become a staple in discussions of other maritime mysteries. Furthermore, the incident led to changes in maritime law and procedures, particularly regarding the handling of hazardous materials like alcohol. It also underscored the importance of detailed record-keeping on ships. This case has provided valuable material for historians and researchers studying 19th century maritime history, offering insights into shipping practices, legal proceedings, and international trade of the era. In conclusion, the Mary Celeste disappearance is more than a historical event. It's a cultural phenomenon that sparked curiosity, debate, and creative expression for nearly 150 years. While the mystery remains unsolved, its legacy endures, captivating the minds of those who encounter her story. So, what are my thoughts on what happened to the Mary Celeste? Honestly, I don't want to know. Mysteries are often more fun than reality. And that's about it for the mystery of the Mary Celeste. A very, very interesting and intriguing story. Something I'd only heard of prior to making this video, but while doing the research and while writing the script, it was honestly like reading a book, like imagining yourself in that location and in place of some of these people right here. Very, very vivid, very cool mystery, very cool maritime mystery if you want to narrow it down even more, and a super, super fascinating story. Either way, what do you think happened to the Mary Celeste, and do you know of any other maritime mysteries similar to this one? Leave a comment below with your opinion on this topic and what I just asked. And if you enjoyed this video, don't hesitate to leave a like. It really helps out a lot. And if you like the content and want to see more videos like this, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any future content. Thank you so much for watching. Goodbye.